I do not. I have never and also will never use it. All of these world models that people are using they're basically built on the largest copyright infringement in the history of the world.
Yes, every day. Claude Code is the one I'm using at the minute. I've had experience with Codex as well, and right back at the start, it was like Gemini copy and pasting stuff over, but that was not scalable. But yes, Claude Code every single day. Yeah.
I do at my work, yes, and also personally.
I extensively do. We use Claude Code. It kind of became the de facto thing that we use at our company, and we are now really leaning into it. So we are encouraging not only developers, but we're encouraging designers and PMs and product people to also use it, however they see fit. But we also started enabling designers to contribute to the code as well in a controlled environment, of course. For now, we're experimenting with it.
No, not currently. I do plan to look into using it, but I don't currently use it in any coding tasks at work. I use it for research, so if I'm looking to research a topic, I'll use it to assist me with that, but I don't actually use it as a coding assistant. I do a lot of work inside AOSP, the Android open source project, which of course is it's a vast project. LLM chatbots help me try and find content or code inside the AOSP code base that I'm looking for. So it's good as a research mechanism for that, or other topics as well, of course. But I haven't used it yet as a code generation tool.
I basically take a pretty extremist stance on it for ethical grounds. I think these companies that are propped up by venture capitalist money are essentially addicting their users, creating people who are reliant on the tool or ineffective without using the tool. And then that money is going to run out and costs are going to skyrocket, and you will either just have to pay, or the thing you've now come to rely on will no longer be accessible to you because the costs will be so astronomical. Just this week, there's this meme going around of GitHub Copilot switching to usage-based billing, where someone's bill went from $30 to $1,400 a month because it's usage-based and they were using it a lot. And so that same rug pull is going to happen with all the large LLM providers. They just currently have more VC money that they can burn. And so you can fully expect prices to skyrocket soon. But even with that, all of these world models that people are using they're basically built on the largest copyright infringement in the history of the world. No author of any book, blog posts, library tool, all the stuff that they ingest are getting any sort of kickback that you otherwise would get when you create a derivative work. They're certainly not abiding by any of the license terms of these work. So you have permissibly licensed software, which they're totally free to ingest, but you also have very aggressive sort of copyleft licensed software, which they ingest and spit back out, essentially laundering code through the LLM to remove the license terms. And so all of those things, to me, tells me that these companies are not acting in my best interest. They're not providing this tool because they're altruistic, that they want to make me a better engineer. They just want to use this work that millions of other people have done, turn it into something that they can monetize and just extract more value for themselves.
So I think the thing I use it most for is that probably be like a lot of people say this is boilerplate things that I don't necessarily, want to type out. I also like, I think I appreciate it for tests, at least for coming up with test cases. Like in truth, I think a lot of the tests it writes are a little not great, or either I've had, for example, Claude, I'm an Android developer, generate tests that don't work or that are a little bit odd, like it's testing things that it shouldn't test. But in a broad sense, like high level, like test cases, edge cases, I do like it for helping me come up with the ideas for the test as well. And that is actually very, very, very valuable, I think, because it's able to accumulate patterns of testing. And I do think that actually is very, very helpful. And also, the boilerplate and kind of actually, and a lot of times, especially as someone, like I love doing a lot of custom UI, and I often will, and right now in my particular job, I'm doing a lot of big refactors. So it is kind of nice to say, hey, like, give it a wide berth of like, hey, I want to use this style, please restructure this in this way, and give it kind of big, like specific, detailed, but broad commands. And then again, I don't have to type it out, but I'm still kind of doing a lot of the there's no bunny ears there. I'm still doing a lot of the architecting.
So first of all, it shortens the cycles when I search for things. So that's quite good. And helps me to be more efficient. The other thing is, like, in some cases, it's very convenient also to poke ideas and to explore a little bit, to ask some questions, especially in areas where I have not so much knowledge yet, or where I just have a rough idea, a rough sketch, and then explore a little bit in this direction.
What do I like? I think maybe it's good for problems when you don't know what you're doing and you want to start somewhere. So like as the blank page problem kind of thing. Or maybe technologies that you like not familiar with and can give you ideas of what's possible. So that kind of thing. That's a good use case.
The quality is not great, and I also think like it's really dangerous for people that don't understand what they're doing. That they may just get everything, just push the thing and then just make it work because it works. Also, the maintainability is really bad. So if you want to change a little thing on the code the AI is giving you, instead of fixing it, sometimes it's easier to just trigger it again. So that's the part that is not really great. It's a bit wasteful, I think.
I can get the result that I want in like a fraction of the time, just with a couple of seconds, and then if I have what I want, then I can iterate on the code myself and then actually improve on it. So I'm not so happy about the code, but I'm happy that I can solve a problem, I would say.
That it's not like a human will basically throw its hands up and go, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing it wrong. It doesn't do that. It'll continuously, it's very positive, which is great, but it doesn't just go, you know what, I'm lost, I don't know what I'm doing, please help me. It'll just continue to do kind of that loop until you eventually intervene.
I definitely do TDD, especially, I'm relatively new. I think I was a little bit late to the train, and I am using it for big refactors. So I think it's a good chance to exercise it. But in that case, I do specifically use TDD, and I might have it help me generate tests, but I'll be very certain to, I kind of hand curate the tests, make sure that the old code is working, and then do the new refactors, and then kind of iteratively do that. I do ask it, I have a coworker who says, well, kind of asking it to evaluate itself is helpful. And yeah, to be fair, that's a legit strategy. But I think TDD is really, really, really important right now, for me, especially as I'm adopting it and kind of getting comfortable with understanding what it's good at and what it's not.
We sometimes use TDD, not for everything, but for really critical things that could go very wrong if they break. We do use TDD, but we can also just wing it. And that works as well. We have a very strict review cycle, and we have time to iterate over things to get them right. So basically, that's it. It's again a mixed thing. I don't like the approach that you do, or that you try to write all the specs up front. So what major people call a spec-driven development, which I wouldn't claim it is.
the main problem is here, you make the same mistakes like with waterfall, right? You think that if you have all the cases in your head, that you come to the right solution, and that mostly doesn't work. Where I started was with TDD, but that doesn't work either because the times until you get the response from the AI model are too long. So that breaks your focus. And if you go totally YOLO, yeah, well, you have a lot of cleanup to do afterwards when you do the review. So there's not the optimal way, and I'm still looking for a good answer how to embed it in a very convenient and efficient way, also in my day-to-day work beyond like using it as a pair.
Yeah, that one's a hard one because if you start, the context of the project always works. So when you start with new projects where there's not much in it, it'll kind of just come up with its own little things. So you can't really give it a new project. You have to have some sort of template or your architecture somehow defined. I try to keep things very, very simple. I'll do a lot of refactoring, and I'll kind of just, like I said, steer it along the way.
Honestly, just YOLO, but I should probably do a bit more TDD. Like, to be honest, every now and then, Claude has like guided me in the direction, like, should I also write tests as well as we go? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so, yeah, whatever. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I should, but I don't.
That's a hard question. I think on the short term, so my current thinking, this is with what I know now, I strongly believe that software engineering as a skill set and as a profession will continue to go forward. I really strongly believe I strongly believe that's the case. I don't know what that means necessarily for what an everyday person is, but I do think we will still, I don't think it's going to replace us, but I think the emphasis will even be more so on software engineering skills and architecture and understanding how things work so that you can properly coordinate and, work with agents or, whatever AI comes along the pipe.
So we're not going to be replaced. I feel it's a bit like how it was with web in the 90s. If you look at back then, it was like when web came in, everyone was saying that people are going to be replaced and this is the new thing. And it changed. The industry changed. 80% of the industry changed, roughly. So that's a random number going on my head, sorry. But it didn't die off. It kept going. And that's what it's going to be. The industry is going to change. It's not necessarily going to change for the worse, better or worse. It's just going to change. So you're still going to have devs not using AI, like maybe the 20%, and the 80% they'll most likely be still doing what we're doing now.
What I see so far is that we are right now in a very dangerous place, to be honest, because I feel like a lot of companies don't hire juniors because they think they can replace them with AI. They only want to hire seniors. And the seniors burn out because they have much more responsibilities and they want to do some other jobs like carpenters, or I hear people here saying at the conference they want to be now a farmer, stuff like this. But even if it sounds funny, it's actually quite dangerous because you have people which are dropping out of the jobs, which have the experience, which have the knowledge, and you don't grow a new generation of people back which have then the knowledge and the experience. So what will happen in 5 years if you have a lot of vacancies and who's going to fill them?
It's not that many people are not asking for this themselves. So the tool was available and then they started using it. But then at some point, many companies actually said like, oh, now you have to use AI to actually get your job done. And it's actually, so what I read about this recently was something really interesting also with any of the tools that came in the past. So for example, also the washing machine. Then people had to do it themselves earlier, and then there came a tool, and then they had more time for themselves. But every time you have like a new tool, and then you can get more efficient, then your time, so you think, hey, finally I got some time to do something else which I actually care about. But that's not the case. So the pressure on people is actually gonna increase. Like companies and customers will ask for more to do in the same time. So in the end, we will not win, because it's the same thing which will happen. So the time we will gain, if at all, so it might also take some time, right? So because it's because if it makes mistakes now, you're gonna have to fix those mistakes in 2 months. So that's also, but you know, if we have any time improvement at all, that's definitely gonna be. So even in the success case, we will not win, because in the success case, we will just do more in the same time now.
It currently feels dark at the moment because of the amount of job losses that are happening. But however, there is definitely a lot of potential used in the technology. A lot of people talk about the upcoming bust in the markets because the amount of private venture capital that's been used to sustain the market. And that can't go on indefinitely, because essentially it's been subsidized. So it'll be interesting to see what happens after the bubble bursts and what happens to the market, because I feel that the only conclusion is that prices will have to go up to sustain LLMs as they're being used for just now. And I'm not quite sure how companies will respond to that. Will they decide, yes, we will pay those higher prices, or will they go? Will there be a bit more of a reset back to closer to what we had before, where engineers are used and more like what they were before, and LMs are just used as an assistive tool on the side rather than wholesale taking people's jobs? I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to stay positive, but I can't predict the future. Well, there's a lot of joy in coding. Like when you get something working, especially if you've just learned a topic for the first time, and seen that code working, for me, working on Android, seen it working on device, but whether it was a web browser or desktop or whatever, it's great seeing your code working. I think, and knowing that you did that yourself rather than getting an LLM tool to do that, I think that is missing. And I think as well, with engineers working deep in the code base, then they obviously, they're the ones who have all the context of what that code base is and continue working on it. But obviously there's a domain that you write in that code base for. So for example, I'm doing stuff in the automotive industry and I'm learning lots about the automotive industry. And people will do it for like ticketing apps or any app basically. And they learn things about that domain too. And I think if people become over dependent on LLMs, I think like people don't absorb all those learnings from both the software development side, but also the domains that they're working in as well.
I miss that kind of like feeling of like, as I said, like if I had a random idea, I usually spend like 3 days thinking with the thing. And at the end when it worked, it was like that aha moment. Now I feel like with AI, I can just like ask it to do it. And it may be like bad code, but it works. So I have that aha moment, like just by, talking English with my agent. So that's the part I miss, like that 3 days of hard work to just see something that I was thinking about, that now I just trigger it and then I tinker with it. I still got them, but not as often.
It's about having fun while doing coding, having fun on the job. It became much more mechanic. You just prompt, review, and the cycle goes on. So it takes the fun out of it.
At least if you're going to use it, try and think about why you're using it, what you're using it for, and using it in a way that if it were to disappear tomorrow when, the bubble inevitably pops behind it, that you're not left hung out to dry and not able to actually do the thing that, earns you your living. Mm-hmm.